I was born in an elevator in a typical 1960 tower in the suburbs of Paris. And when I was a child, my dear mother used to tell me that I was a turbulent boy because I was born in an elevator. Actually, today I think it is the other way around. I was born in an elevator because I was a turbulent child, and still I am. And the one who knows me in this room knows what I'm talking about. So if my delivery was so fast in this tiny elevator, it is because I was eager to discover the world. And traveling has always been a dream for me. Because while you are traveling, you can expect the unexpected. You know, I never expect here, can't see very much, but I never expect to meet those rhinos and those buffaloes in the Kaziranga National Park at 5 o'clock in the morning. I never expect to swim with an elephant in the Andaman. This was something that I never expect, actually. And I never expect those truly human experience in the vibrant and lovely city of Kolkata. I never expect as well to cross those living bridges in Meghalaya. You know those living bridges? There is more than 200 of those living bridges in the Khasi territory in Meghalaya. Some of them are 500 years old, and some of them can carry trucks and cars. It's a beautiful place to watch, actually, beautiful place to be. And actually, I never expect as well to cross those, Hobbit village. Here I am in Kashmir at more or less 10,000 feet, and those villages are, under the snow for 9 months in the year. But when they are not, you can really stay and live under the ground in those villages in Kashmir. It's again a beautiful. How often in your life have you experimented a new fruit? This is something rare, specifically nowadays. We don't experiment very often a new fruit, a new flavor, a new taste. I think one of the late speakers was talking about the seeds and the importance of keeping the seeds. But just think about it. Here in India, every morning at breakfast, I can have bilimbi, I can have chiku, mangoustan, apple custard at breakfast. And I can tell you that none of those fruits are most by most of my friends in Europe. They are not. And you know what? Whenever I'm traveling to the 5-star hotels in India, whatever fruit that I have at breakfast is melon and watermelon, which are literally tasteless, I can tell you. I really encourage you to go to France, south of France, or Spain, or Portugal, to taste the sweetness of a melon, and you will see the difference. And why would it be so important, to taste and to keep those flavors and to taste those new flavors? Just think a little bit about India without chili, the Indian cuisine without chili, or the Punjabi cuisine without aloo, the potatoes. Or, a cricket match without a chai. Well, chili, aloo, chai, and cricket were not in India a few centuries ago. It has been brought by, the Portuguese and the British traders, and it has sweetened us so well that today it's completely part of the Indian identity. So this is why it is important to taste and to experiment, to expect the unexpected. And I really encourage the 5-star hotel of Bangalore and of India sometimes to propose something else than melon and watermelon at breakfast. So I studied engineering, and after my military service, because I did a military service, it was still mandatory at that point of time in France, I went to Portugal. It was one of my first assignments. I joined a consulting company, a consulting firm. And I joined a bank called Banco Espírito Santo, which means literally the Bank of the Holy Spirit. And I can tell you that this can only happen in those deep Latin countries. That cannot happen everywhere else. And so then my notion of diversity changed because I met my wife in Lisbon. And so my wife, she's like you and me. She has 4 grandparents. But the beauty of her grandparents is that each of them is from a different continent. So actually, my father-in-law was born in Brazzaville, in Congo, in the middle of Africa, on the west coast. And he's himself from a Portuguese trader and a Congolese housewife. And my mother-in-law was born in East Timor. Does any of you know East Timor? So East Timor, it's a very tiny island which is between Indonesia and Australia. It is independent since 2002. And so my mother-in-law is born there from a Sino-Timorese mother, so basically a mother which is mixed of a Chinese and East Timorese, and again a Portuguese naval officer. And my wife herself, she is born in Dili, the capital of East Timor today. So basically my wife, she is African, European, Asian, and Austronesian, the people which are from Australia and the surrounding islands. So as you can guess, my will for diversity and my wish for discovery was totally met. That was for sure. But actually, I soon realized that it's not always easy, to live with such kind of diversity and to live in a multicultural family. And here, to illustrate this, it was in Himachal Pradesh, above the Tosh Glacier at 18,000 feet, and I was with my son, and it was a one-week trek, 100 kilometers, and we were quite high at that point of time. It was a very challenging journey. What are the challenges that we are facing on a day-to-day life? Typically, which language should we speak at home? Should we speak Portuguese? Should we speak French? Or should we speak even Tetum, which is the language of Dili, the capital of East Timor, which is spoken by my wife, mother-in-law, and great-mother-in-law? What should we name the kids? Should it be a name which is typical to one culture, or a name which is accommodating in both cultures? What kind of education do we want them to have? And even, the emotional style from one culture to another can be very diverse. And my wife being African, Asian, European, and Austronesian, she can have a kaleidoscope of expression, which can be sometimes totally unexpected. And the notion of group and privacy can differ as well between culture, and so finding the right boundaries in a multicultural family is not always easy. So actually, I realized very soon that while I was discovering the others, I was indeed discovering something else. The more I was able, to see different things and different people, the more I was able to see what I like, what I dislike, what I love, and finally who I am. And this is the beauty, of traveling. It is most of the time you are learning more about you than about the others, or actually it's a combination of both. And here, it is, I just would like to advertise this a little bit, because this is a movie which will be released very soon in Bangalore. Actually, I had the chance to do a 1 minute, 2 minute script in that movie, which is called DMG The Movie, and it will be on the theater on 10th of January. And so I was really learning about myself when I did that, actually. This was quite unexpected as well. So we stayed in Paris for a while, we had 2 children, and life offered us very soon very new challenges and new opportunities for discoveries and diversity. So a large French company offered me a job in Bangalore, and with my wife, we decided to take the challenge. Ketehe, agar kisi chisko, dilse chaho, to sari kayana, tumhe use milaneki, koshishme lug jatihe. So I guess that everyone has recognized Shah Rukh Khan in Om Shanti Home. For the one who doesn't speak Hindi, it means that it is said that if you really truly want something from your heart, and deeply from your heart, then the entire force of the universe will conspire together and try to get it for you. And this is India. India from the Persian world, Sindhu, the land of the river, from Bharat, from Sanskrit, the land to be maintained. India is again a new category of diversity. I heard that there is 1,600 languages in India. There is probably as many languages in India than in the entire rest of the world. India is fantastic, and from the history at first, from the early Indus civilization, the arrival of the Aryan, the conquest of the Ganga at the time of the Upanishad, more or less 15th century BC. The science for the soul from Mahadevi and Siddhartha. The mathematics and the astronomy, yes, because the mathematics are from India, where in the West we always believe that it is from the Arabs. The Mauryas, of course, and the meeting with the Greek on the bank of the Indus, and the settlement of the satrap, in the current Afghanistan and Pakistan. The Gupta. The rise and fall of Buddhism in India. Yes, because Buddhism, probably in the 5th century of this era, was as spread as Hinduism before it has completely been re-assimilated in the mainstream of Hinduism. The Cholas, the first Delhi Sultanate, the Vijayanagara, the first Portuguese and Dutch traders, rapidly followed by the French and British traders, and even the Danish traders. There is a Danish settlement in India, in Tamil Nadu, called Tranquebar. Of course, the great Mughal Empire, the Punjabi, the Marathi, the Ahom, in the current Assam, and the British, of course, the British, and the independence. There is so much to learn in India. There is so much to discover. And my passion for this country has driven me in so many places. And I have realized that there is as many differences in the whole India and in the entire Europe, probably more. And there is as many differences, between a Kashmiri and a Tamilian than between a Norwegian and a Turk. Just let's have a look to few spots of the diversity of the demographic of India. Here we are in Kashmir. And the next one. Thank you very much for doing that for me. Here we are in Tamil Nadu, in Chettinad, actually, a beautiful place, Chettinad. You know, it's a Art Deco city in the middle of nowhere, built in the mid-19th century. On the next one, we are in Ladakh, in one of those stupas, those beautiful stupas. The next one, we are in Marina Bay. I guess that most of you has realized, but again, so many different faces, so many different people actually, which are in India, beautiful people. Here we are in Maheshwar. Maheshwar is on the bank of the Narmada River, and the Narmada River is so special because it's the only big river of India which is flowing from east to west, while all the others are floating, you know, from west to east. And it's a beautiful place. I really encourage you to go. Here we are in Raisin. Raisin, it's close to Bhopal. It's in Madhya Pradesh again, close to Sanchi and Bhopal, and it's a beautiful Muslim community which I met there, and I loved it very much. I have to tell you that I did all those travels with my beautiful family, with my 2 kids and my wife, and I can tell you that we are learning so much together about India and the beauty of India. Here we are in Meghalaya, close to Cherrapunji and the Seven Sister Falls. And on the next one, we are again back to the south. We are in Kerala, in Kovalam Beach, and this one is Gujarat, in Patan, you know, close to 200 kilometers north of Ahmedabad. In 2011, I went to Ekmund Sahib Lake. You know, Ekmund Sahib in Uttarakhand, it's close to Badrinath. It's a holy lake for the Sikh, and it's at 14,000 feet. It requires 2 days trekking to get there. The waters there are extremely cold because you know, there is a glacier coming in, and so the water should be at 2 to 3 degrees. And so we used to dive in it to get you know, blessed by God. And so while I was ascending to that lake, I met a group of Sadar, and one of them told me, "You know, Etienne, if you don't see God in all, you don't see God at all." And I think it was a beautiful sentence. I love it so much, actually. So it doesn't mean that we have to agree with whatever we observe. It doesn't mean that we have to adopt all the other traditions of the world. But I think that it emphasizes the beauty of diversity. And I think it's emphasizes as well the gratitude we should testify to the creator of this beautiful world, whether it is God, the Big Bang, or the human, or maybe all of us together, I think. So the beauty of traveling is that you can observe, you can appreciate, you can learn, and finally you can evolve. But the difficulty is that you need to be in a special mindset with a special attitude to do so. You know, you can still travel 10,000 of miles and eat watermelon at your 5-star hotel because your mind is not ready to taste something else, actually. And one of my seniors, and it is on the next slide, one of my seniors last week in Paris summarized it extremely well, actually. It was my yearly evaluation, actually. It happened like that. And he did a graph for me. I can explain you later why, but where he put 2 axes here on this graph. So one of the axes, the vertical one, is about your self-esteem. So when you are on the top, you have a very good esteem of yourself, and when you are on the bottom, you have a low esteem of yourself. And the horizontal axis is about your esteem of the other, so my esteem of you. And so when I am completely on the right, I have a very good esteem of you, and when I am on the opposite side, on the left, I have a low esteem of you. So here, to get a maximum learning experience, you need to have a good esteem of yourself and a good esteem of the others. Why? It's because if you don't have a good esteem of yourself, you are basically depressive, and so you are not able to learn anything. And if you are on the left side, if you don't have a good esteem of the other, then you won't be able to appreciate. You might be able to observe them, but you won't be able to appreciate them. And if you don't appreciate them, you won't learn anything from them. And if you don't learn anything, you won't be able to evolve at all. But here there is a trick. Is that in general, we start our life on the top left corner. We have a good esteem of ourselves, for most of the people, and we have a good esteem of our surrounding community. You know, we appreciate, I am French, I appreciate the French, and I appreciate my family, my parents, and the brothers and sisters. So how do we move from that stage where we might not appreciate completely the other community? We don't appreciate them because we don't know them. They are different, we fear them, they are bizarre. So how can we move from that stage to the other stage? The difficulty is that it's not, you know, an horizontal journey. You know, you can't move from the left stage to the right stage without introspection, without really questioning yourself and doubting a little bit. And this is the difficulty of this journey. It is extremely difficult. It requires a lot of effort not to judge the others. But it's only by not judging the others that you really will be able to be on that top right corner and that you will be able to maximize your learning experience with the others. And that's the difficulty of this journey. So what does it mean to be an Indian with such a diversity? So does it mean to be a Hindu, a Sikh, a Jain, a Parsi, a Muslim or a Christian? Does it mean to have a guru, to have a referent figure? You know, you in India, I have been able to notice that most of you, you have a kind of a referent figure, someone that will accompany you your entire life, even if you don't see him at all anymore. But you know, he can be a professor from university, he can be one of your early managers, he can be a guru, as I said before. But it is someone that you will refer, that will really stay in your mind forever. It is not something that we have much in Europe, I can tell you. Or is it, you know, those beautiful saris that you can see in the streets, those beautiful and colorful saris? Or is it as well, you know, those beautiful and immaculate dhotis that you are able to wear and that I'm wearing sometimes, even in office. I'm wearing that in a 7,000 office, Western company. That happens to me sometimes. So does it mean, you know, to build a multi-family under one single roof, you know, with your parents or your in-law? Or does it mean, you know, to be, you know, this very little special shaking heads, which is so unique, but which can mean so many different things depending on the context, you know? If I said that, it would mean yes, but if I said that, it would mean no. So, but I love it. I'm using it every day. Or is it this unique, you know, way of love for animals? You know, you accept animals everywhere, you know, the street dogs, but all the others. I have snakes in my garden, and it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Or is it, you know, this unique way of smiling to people? You know, here you can smile to people that you have never met. In the street, you smile to people. You smile. Just try to do that in the subway of Paris, and you will see. It will be a different experience, an unexpected one. So I have to admit that I have been blessed by God to live such kind of experience. I love India so much. And first of all, I think that it is for the people which are living here. It is really for that. India is teaching me so much, and it's teaching me every day. India has taught me, you know, to expect the unexpected. India has taught me to know myself better. India has taught me gratitude and humility. India taught me, you know, not to fear the different people and not to fear to be different. You know, I am very much observed here every day. But I think that above all, India has allowed me to see the beauty of God. And I think that this is diversity. You know, diversity is a quest for your soul, for the true meaning. And I have engaged this quest 48 years ago in an elevator, and it is not over. Thank you.